Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Manns, and I'd like to welcome you to the April 4th Coalition Show. This is the November 20th, 2023 edition of the show. It is 480th that we have done since the closing of the North Adams Regional Hospital, and the 20th that we have done since its announcement of its possible reopening. The April 4th Coalition's mission statement is, we are for workers' rights and collective bargaining rights, and are against tax breaks for the rich and corporations who ship our jobs overseas. We support all the articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but as is our custom, we put the emphasis on Article 23.
Okay, I'll do section 1 and 2.
Okay.
Number 1, everyone has the right to work, the free choice of employment, the just and favorable conditions of work, and protection against unemployment. Number 2, everyone without any discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work.
Number 3, everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration, which is compensation in whatever form it may take, ensuring for himself or herself and his or her family an existence worthy of human dignity and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. Michael.
Number 4, everyone has the right to form and join trade unions for the protection of his or her interests.
And as is our custom, we do a thank you to Michael Putnam, who is the program director for the public community radio station, WMNB LP 107.1, for airing the audio portions of our shows on Fridays at 6 p.m., and to the fabulous staff here at NBCTC, Northern Berkshire Community Television, for their assistance. So we thank Joanne Hurlbut, David Fabiano, and Nicole A. Brown, because without them, we could not possibly produce this show. Okay, Dick.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just would like to mention that today is a very solemn day in North Adams because we lost one of our great citizens, Shirley Davis. You know, her funeral was today, and her and her family, our condolences are extended to them and all that she gave to our community. She was truly a good neighbor.
In every way.
Yeah.
Nice take on her founding of the UNO neighborhood.
Yeah.
And unity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we just want to mention that. But today we're going to talk a little bit about anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and also talk a little bit about something that I personally feel that, you know, there should be a ceasefire in Gaza.
Israel.
You know, I've called my congressmen and my senators countless times. Well, I think I can count them, maybe 6 times each, 5 times each.
Probably.
Each asking them, maybe it's like 1 or 2 days in a row, or maybe I'll wait a few days, but I'll say, listen, I believe in Israel's right to exist and Israel's right to defend itself, but I also believe in
the Palestinian people's right to exist and defend
well,
itself?
I don't believe in collective punishment.
Right.
What happened on October 7th and what Hamas did was horrendous. It was a war crime. It was awful. But, you know, to make innocent people suffer, you know, where I think we're up to 11,000, over 11,000 Palestinians are dead, half of them probably children. You know.
And not only is it chilling because Israel did it, but Hamas had to know what Israel's response was going to be, and they were willing to sacrifice 11,000 civilians,
it's
which
awful.
is equally awful.
It's just awful. And there's not. And what I end it with is I know that there's no military solution to this problem. It has to be a diplomatic solution, or you know, just you know.
I honestly think it has to take both the Palestinians and the Israelis to be willing to trust each other.
Right, but other forces have to come in and do it. But first of all, you know, just because you're critical, like you want a ceasefire, it doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. You know, and so I thought we'd run a video about what anti-Semitism is, and we'll watch that, and then we'll react to it.
All right.
What is anti-Semitism? Judaism has been around for thousands of years, and for nearly as long there have been people who spread Jew hatred, also known as anti-Semitism. The reasons for this hatred have varied over the centuries. Some have believed their religion demands it, others feared what is different, and others were simply racist. Unfortunately, even today we see many of these kinds of stereotypes around the world. So, what does anti-Semitism look like today? You've probably seen images like this. It's actually a modern adaptation of a very old false accusation. In the Middle Ages, some Christians alleged that Jews used the blood of non-Jews as part of their religious rituals. That's the same old lie. Jews kill the weak and drink their blood. It's called a blood libel. Eventually, the blood libel and other myths made their way into the Arab world. In Damascus, for example, when a local monk went missing, the French consul had Jews in the city tortured into falsely confessing that they had used his blood for their Passover rituals. This was a total lie, disgusting in any way against Jewish dietary laws, but the incident resulted in years of anti-Jewish violence. Today, too, some people use the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to accuse Jews of all kinds of lies that present them as monsters. Some deny the indisputable historic Jewish connection to Jerusalem and the Holy Land. Others blame Jews and Judaism across the world for the conflict. Again, these are old lies in new form, and they're designed to fuel hate. But the older forms of anti-Semitism still exist today. We see them on the far right by white supremacists and white nationalists, or in the name of religion, or from conspiracies about Jews, or on the far left, including under the guise of human rights. So what is it? Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Although the word Semitic refers to a family of languages originating in the Middle East, such as Hebrew, Arabic, and Amharic, the word anti-Semitism only refers to Jews. It was coined by an anti-Semite in Germany in the late 19th century. He used pseudoscience to classify Jews as Semites and as a separate race, which would be used by Adolf Hitler and the Nazis during the Holocaust. But anti-Semitism is not just hatred. Sometimes we hear people say,
Jews have too much power and they control the media, but I don't hate them, so I'm not anti-Semitic.
but that is anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is conspiracy, not just hatred. To the anti-Semite, Jews are someone in power. While Jews have been and continue to be vilified as inferior, Jews today are also collectively perceived as being superior, as having too much power or control, and are attacked, even killed, because of this belief. This is what makes anti-Semitism different from other forms of hate and bigotry. While racism punches down, anti-Semitism punches up. Because the core of anti-Semitism is envy, resentment, distrust, and conspiracy, when we witness the weakening of democratic, pluralistic societies, we often see rising anti-Semitism. It's not only a danger to Jews, but to everyone. The white supremacist ideology that led to a massacre of Jews while worshipping also motivated the mass murder of Muslims in their mosques in New Zealand, and the murder of Black Americans in Buffalo, New York. And it's not only Jews who are harmed by anti-Semitism. The anti-Semitic attack in Halle, Germany, killed 2 people who weren't Jewish after the gunman failed to break into the synagogue. Anti-Semitism may start with the Jews, but it never ends there. Okay, so all this hate is wrong, but what can individuals do to change it? First, learn more about Judaism and the history of the Jewish people, including in your own country. Second, when you see Jews portrayed in egregious or preposterous ways, keep in mind the long history of demonization. Finally, call out anti-Semitism when you see it. Standing up to hate isn't always popular, but advancing peace requires courage. The more we learn about each other, the more we can see all people as sacred beings, deserving of the utmost love, dignity, and respect.
There's a lot packed in there.
Yes, there was a lot packed in that very enlightening video. I mean, you never think about it when you just say, I don't hate, when the truth is it's fear and suspicion and lack of trust all bundle up into prejudices and hate. Doesn't matter if it's against the Jewish people. They have a long history of it happening to them, probably one of the longest. But I suspect it's been around forever for everybody, because anyone can be a victim of it.
All we can do is keep on hoping that sooner or later, they're going to settle the differences. Because they can anytime they want, as the 2 holes. They can do it. But it's tough because sometimes people don't want to give up. Even though it isn't theirs, they want to keep it.
It's like ancestral hatred. It's hard to give up.
It's hard to give it up.
Yep.
But,
It's almost a custom or a habit at
Right.
this point.
right. And then on the other side, also, there's Islamophobia.
Correct.
And we have another video about that. And it's Islamophobia
Excuse me.
let's watch the video and then we'll react to that too.
What is Islamophobia? Islamophobia is a form of racism that targets Muslims and those perceived to be Muslim. Essentially, Islamophobia is anti-Muslim racism. As an ideology, what is Islamophobia? Islamophobia is a form of racism that targets Muslims and those perceived to be Muslim. Essentially, Islamophobia is anti-Muslim racism. As an ideology, Islamophobia has existed for centuries, but the term was popularized in 1997 in a report about Islamophobia by the Runnymede Trust, a respected UK anti-racist think tank. Being racist is about insisting that there are negative and fixed differences between social groups, for example Muslims, and that every individual within that social group embodies the same negative differences. It is an essentializing point of view and is founded upon dated biological assumptions of race that science has confirmed do not actually exist. Although Muslims are a religious group rather than a racial one, Muslims have been racialized. Racialization is a process through which racist assumptions about specific ethnic and racial groups, for example Pakistanis or Arabs, are placed onto cultural practices such as styles of dress or culinary habits, and onto groups such as Muslim communities, and vice versa. This is why Islamophobia is a form of racism. Islamophobia tends to have more impact on visibly identifiable Muslims, such as Muslim women who wear hijabs, niqabs, or head coverings, and Muslim men with beards. Other religious groups, such as Sikhs and Hindus, experience Islamophobia too, because they are racialized in a similar way to Muslims. Islamophobia can be structural and institutional, as well as personal and everyday. It operates through verbal and physical attacks, damage to property or buildings, the distribution of discriminatory literature through demonstrations and marches, hate speech, or through personal attacks or intimidation. There are many different groups involved in promoting Islamophobia. First and very powerful is the state and the counter-terrorism strategies used by state institutions, such as the police, health services, immigration policies, and schools and universities. Then there are far-right political movements. And there is also an Islamophobia industry in which Islamophobic donors provide extensive funding to right-wing think tanks, pressure groups, and political groups who promote anti-Muslim narratives. Islamophobia is also enabled through extremist acts of violence and international political decisions which capitalize upon them, positioning all Muslims as responsible. Media coverage exacerbates this by promoting discriminatory language, images, and text, including on social media. But we can all make a stand against Islamophobia by taking a clear stand against anything we think is Islamophobic, engaging with politics and political leadership to make a stand against racism more broadly, improving public understandings of anti-racism and Islamophobia through revising educational curricula or training. And we must connect with other movements that resist discrimination so that Islamophobia is challenged alongside interconnected oppressions.
Well, that was, talking about Islamophobia, and they both the anti-Semitism video that we saw and the Islamophobia video we saw both had that one thing in common: racism.
Racism.
Which can be, and they said it, can be of personal nature, and then it could be institutional too. And so with that in common, we have to start treating people as individuals. There's only one race. There's only one race.
Right.
It's the human race. And we're all part of it. There's one sky and there's one human race.
And there's one planet Earth, and
Yeah.
you're all on it.
Yeah, and we have to learn to share it
Yeah.
non-violently.
Non-violently.
See, we're the April 4th Coalition, and we picked that name because Martin Luther King was assassinated on April 4th, and he was a man that stood for nonviolence. He wanted change. He was
Definitely
against
change.
segregation. He was against against
I think he was
people who limit people's right to vote. He was anti-war. and,
definitely
uh,
always wanted peace.
And he was a student of Gandhi, who also was a person that wanted
Peace
peace in all religions,
to get
as
along.
long as you respected what was believed in the silent and the unknown, that you could respect them. It wasn't
Right.
something that you had to tear someone else's beliefs down in order to
To
keep.
make yours right,
Yeah.
because then yours is wrong anyway.
Right.
It's always been my philosophy. If
Yeah.
you
So
have to
just
use
like
violence, it doesn't work.
Just like what happened here in America after 9/11, there were a lot of us that protested against war, having an aggressive war against Iraq and Afghanistan, rather than trying to treat it like a criminal activity by a few people. We made
We'll
it.
march, yeah.
We made it a whole thing against a whole country and a whole people.
Right.
And I think that's what's going on right now.
I think we have both sides battling, because in this country, we have each side. One is very anti-Semite, and then we have the anti-Islamic, and
Or they could be both.
they could be both.
And they enjoy
They
enjoy
do
that we're fighting against each other.
other.
And but I guess I'd like to look to the words of Martin Luther King when he came out against the Vietnam War. He wasn't being unpatriotic. He wasn't saying that he hated Americans, but he just saw that war was an evil. So let's listen to what Martin Luther King talked about segregation and in his moral stand against segregation.
For those who say to me, stick to civil rights, I have another answer. That is that I've fought too long and too hard now against segregated public accommodation to end up segregating my moral concern. I'm not going to do that. Others can do what they want to do. That's their business. Other civil rights leaders, for various reasons, refuse or can't take a stand or have to go along with the administration. That's their business. But I must say tonight that I know that justice is indivisible. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Was that all that you wanted of the speech?
That's all I wanted of the speech, is that it went on to talk about why he was against the war in Vietnam. But I think it applies right now to the situation in Gaza. There was a horrible injustice committed upon the Israeli people by Hamas. But the reaction
Is justice
is in the
Justice-
bombing, is also,
a criminal action?
yeah. And what happens is, if you're against, if you're asking for a ceasefire to try to come to some political solution to this situation, it's taken as you're being anti-Semitic. And we have a Congresswoman, Tlaib, who's the only Palestinian congresswoman in the United States. And her grandmother still lives
In Gaza?
I believe in Gaza, I'm not sure.
Or lives somewhere among the
Yes,
Palestinians?
right. And so she made a speech at a rally, and she was calling for justice. And when she called for justice, and I don't know the speech completely, and I'm not going to say I'm an expert in this, but I think that the flashpoint was, she said, we want justice from the river, what they talk about, the Jordan River, to the sea, to the Mediterranean. And that was interpreted as a racist statement because Hamas uses it as a statement that says we have to get rid of Israel completely from the river to the sea. I don't think that she was making that statement. I think she was talking about justice for everyone
in the world.
from that land, from the river to the sea. But people, hear things differently and are hurt by different ways.
things.
So Congress voted to censor her. And in reaction to that, she was able to make a speech, and it was a very emotional speech, and I think we should listen to it. And because I think in the light of Martin Luther King and how he came out against war, it wasn't that he hated America, but he wanted to stand up for America, but a nonviolent America that could work for nonviolent change to end segregation and give people justice. So let's listen to what the Congresswoman had to say in reaction to her censorship.
I'm the only Palestinian American serving in Congress, Mr. Chair, and my perspective is needed here now more than ever. I will not be silenced, and I will not let you distort my words. Folks forget I'm from the city of Detroit, the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, where I learned to speak truth to power even if my voice shakes. Trying to bully or censor me won't work, because this movement for a ceasefire is much bigger than one person. It's growing every single day. There are millions of people across our country who oppose Netanyahu's extremism and are done watching our government support collective punishment and the use of white phosphorus bombs that melt flesh to the bone. They are done watching our government, Mr. Chair, supporting cutting off food, water, electricity, and medical care to millions of people with nowhere to go. Like me, Mr. Chair, they don't believe the answer to war crimes is more war crimes. The refusal of Congress and the administration to acknowledge Palestinian lives is chipping away at my soul. Over 10,000 Palestinians have been killed. Majority were children. But let me be clear. My criticism has always been of the Israeli government and Netanyahu's actions. It is important to separate people and governments, Mr. Chair. No government is beyond criticism. The idea that criticizing the government of Israel is anti-Semitic sets a very dangerous precedent, and it's being used to silence diverse voices speaking up for human rights across our nation. Do you realize what it's like, Mr. Chair, for the people outside the chamber right now, listening in agony to their own government dehumanizing them? To hear the President of the United States, we helped elect, dispute death tolls as we see video after video of dead children and parents under rubble. Mr. Chair, do you know what it's like to fear rising hate crimes, to know how Islamophobia and anti-Semitism makes us all less safe, and worry that your own child might suffer the horrors that 6-year-old Wadia did in Illinois? I can't believe I have to say this, but Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings, just like anyone else. My city, my grandmother, like all Palestinians, just wants to live her life with freedom and human dignity we all deserve. Speaking up to save lives, Mr. Chair, no matter faith, no matter ethnicity, should not be controversial in this chamber. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. Why? What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all. We cannot lose our shared humanity, Mr. Chair. I hear the voices of advocates in Israel, in Palestine, across America, and around the world for peace. I am inspired by the courageous survivors in Israel who have lost loved ones, yet are calling for a ceasefire and the end to violence. I am grateful to the people in the streets for the peace movement, with countless Jewish Americans across the country standing up and lovingly saying, "Not in our name." We will continue to call for a ceasefire, Mr. Chair, for the immediate delivery of critical humanitarian aid to Gaza, for the release of all hostages and those arbitrarily detained, and for every American to come home. We will continue to work for a real lasting peace that upholds human rights and dignity of all people, and centers in peaceful coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians, and censures no one, and ensures that no person, no child has to suffer or live in fear of violence. 71% of Michigan Democrats support a ceasefire. So you can try to censure me, but you can't silence their voices. I urge my colleagues to join with the majority of Americans and support a ceasefire now to save as many lives as possible. President Biden must listen to and represent all of us, not just some of us. I urge the President to have the courage to call for a ceasefire and the end of killings. Thank you, and I yield.
It's a difficult thing to
Oh,
do.
Very difficult.
Serious, I mean, hey, there's no,
Oh,
there's
no.
no wind to anybody. They just more killing. That's what's bad about it. And it doesn't seem like anybody right now can put a stop to it for a long period of time.
Yeah, well,
I'm
that's,
not sure, aren't they talking another ceasefire over the weekend?
they're
and,
trying to get a ceasefire.
and the release of all the hostages.
Yes.
And I'm going to be fair to Biden. He did say both lives were valuable, both Palestinians,
Right.
and that he doesn't enjoy seeing innocent civilians harmed,
And
and
he's
that he's
been
been urging
pushing for a two-state solution.
solution.
Right now, we have in Israel, I've read critiques from Israelis that have been in the paper that from Jerusalem, they drew the analogy of the type of leader Donald Trump was as the type of leader that Netanyahu was. He took competent people, took them out of the government and put people that were
For him.
for him,
stooges.
religious fanatics for him in place. And right now, the government in Israel doesn't represent the Israeli people.
Represents
like-
a small segment, just like
Right. And we need to find a two-state solution. Netanyahu doesn't want to talk about a two-state solution.
No, he doesn't.
I've heard people talk about Netanyahu who wanted to raise up Hamas. He didn't like the Palestinian Authority, and he thought that they were dangerous because they were like
reasonable.
Yasser Arafat was an atheist. He didn't believe in God. So he wasn't welcomed by a lot of the Muslim Arabs because he was just, he just wanted
He wanted
land
land
for-
for his people.
right. Or, so the
Right.
Palestinian Authority, which has been weakened, they were separated by Hamas. So it was like a three-state solution. So what we need to do is use all our power to stop the fighting, to verify everything, get UN people in there, stop killing UN people, and let's get some peace. Let's get some peace in the Middle East.
And this may
and
strike you as
dignity.
an odd way to end it, but we actually have Thanksgiving coming up. So we're going to say Happy Thanksgiving and see you next week.
There's power in the factory, power in the land, power in the hand of the worker. But it all amounts to nothing if together we don't stand. There is power in our union. Now the lessons of the past were all learned with workers' blood. Mistakes of the bosses we must pay for. From the cities and the farmlands to trees.